We are live. Welcome. Good evening. Ding, 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 ding. It is our precious time together, the most wonderful time of the week. And I am super excited to talk about the week ahead. Where is the moon? And what's up with this new moon in Scorpio? Let me tell you, I feel like last year, Scorpio not Scorpio, but Scorpio season kind of left a mark. It left, I don't want to say a bad taste, but definitely I was weary of Scorpio season this year. I felt like I wanted to sleep through it. When Scorpio season began, actually, at this point last year, I remember thinking, wake me up when November ends. And more importantly, I have my notes from back then. And so, with that experience and the conversations I had with my coach back then, the heaviness, and it's interesting because there's way so much happening that I keep bringing up every week because it doesn't end, unfortunately, right? And it just keeps getting worse. And so, interestingly enough, globally speaking, things are worse this year than last year. Um, and so this transformation that Scorpio is bringing about, I feel like in some ways I feel it more in a sense because my personal life or the way I feel in my body this year is not as disconnected or as discombobulated as it felt last year. And so, all of that to say that the transformation that Scorpio brings about, we hear the word transform, and I don't know if it's because of Hollywood. I don't know if it's because a soft, smooshy caterpillar literally melting into nothing and rebuilding from literal goo to come out as a butterfly. That metamorphosis that we learned pretty early on in school, right? The process of it. Um, it's always kind of painted on like a big light. And what I've come to gather and what I have come to kind of decide for myself or acknowledge and then believe it is that transformation can still happen in such tiny seamless ways. And this morning I thought about it because out of nowhere today was the day that Up Here decided that before getting to work on whatever I was going to open in my computer, I was going to clean up the desktop. It just felt like it was time. So, all these shortcuts, all these things that you download and you save to the desktop because it's just easier, or all these shortcuts, all these files, and they go somewhere else. They either go in the recycle bin, right, of the desktop, or they go in a folder. And so this morning was the morning that I suddenly decided to clean up my desktop on the computer. And then I went a step further, and I don't do this often, to the point that I have had that background since I bought this computer, and it's already been 2 years. So in 2 years, I have never changed the background of my home page on the desktop. And today was the day that this little Miss Brain decided to change the background on my desktop computer. And as I do it, I instantly thought to myself, there's that new moon in Scorpio transforming even the little bit of things. Like you think that, or you may not even think that changing the desktop background can have such an impact. But in all honesty, when I changed it and I saw what I decided to add or to put up after, which is very kind of lunar because it's a ring, I actually sat back and I took a deep breath and I thought to myself, these are such lovely colors. And then I proceeded to ask myself, why didn't I do this sooner? And then I wanted to really sit and enjoy the moment. It literally only lasted like a few seconds because something else caught my attention and I just moved on to the next thing. But all of that to say that taking that moment and that thought process, see, here's the thing. For as long as Mercury is transiting through Sagittarius, which is still happening, then we will feel like we are all over the place. So let's review. That's what I said this morning on the morning call. Let's review. Clearly, I'm on a review mindset. And it is the season, I feel like. Before the holidays, there's a lot of review happening, at least for me. I've been doing this for so long. And it's because I want to really be proactive about quarter one of the next year. And this used to happen on a business level, right? I wasn't this responsible back in school, and I wasn't this organized when I was having a full-time job with benefits while doing a master's degree. Like I really was not this organized back then. This has all been a product of becoming a real adult out in the world and figuring out how to launch and then maintain a business. And I have to say, of course, give credit where credit is due. I'm incredibly blessed and privileged, and my husband does a lot of the heavy lifting with all of these businesses and things that we do. But I'm still organized in a way that I wasn't before. And so to look back and recognize that, oh, look at me go. I wasn't this organized a few years ago, and now I am, is part of that transformative process. Because a year ago or 2 years ago, I couldn't have looked back and said, wow, look how far I've come, right? Because I wasn't even remotely interested in self-development back then. And here's the interesting thing about the internet and how fast things go. I'm hearing people talk about how self-help is kind of babble and rubbish. Now that used to talk about self-help back in the day and really advocate for it, right? And the thing about it is that it can get lost in the translation of all the buzzwords, and it can definitely get lost in the sensationalization of all of it. But at the end of the day, the system and the community and the family and the utter micro, which is yourself, can get shifted in so many ways that to remain rooted and to remain a solid source of resource, highest optimal support, I feel like should always be part of the priority, should always be at the top. So if you dive into the internet as much as I do, which is usually for research, for books, for you, like all of these things, and you hear some of the self-help gurus talk about how self-help is kind of rubbish and they've just realized this, I want to invite you as part of this transformative process to really take a look back and see, well, how has it helped me and how has it not? And in my opinion, as an ICF certified coach, it's definitely useful and beneficial to have an external support, meaning spouse, family, friendship, partner, right? Or coach, therapist, spiritual advisor, teacher, mentor, right? Hello, welcome. Thank you for all of the love. Who is here? Let me know where you are from. I'm talking about Scorpio and the transformation that's kind of been happening, and the way that it's come up for me is very simple, right? Quote unquote simple things that you wouldn't think are transformative, but in my opinion, it really is. And that was this morning, I switched the desktop background on my computer, and you would think that, oh my gosh, that took you 2 seconds and absolutely no effort. And it's no big deal. But I had the same background for 2 years and a half, and I kept looking at it, and I never questioned, how do I feel about this background? I never thought to myself, am I bored with this background? I never really cared to look at the color and wonder if I even like that color anymore. Like, it was out of mind, not necessarily out of sight. But suddenly today, I looked at it and said, let me just change it. And then I got to sit with the new one and take a deep breath and enjoy it, and then observe that moment of mindfulness where I am paused and I am observing how I leaned back and looked at the colors and loved the colors. And, I thought to myself, yay, you changed the background. Yay, change. And then I realized it's a new moon in Scorpio and how transformative that is. And I am definitely going to give myself credit for changing the background on a desktop that I hadn't even touched in 2 years. Because sometimes the smallest of things really do have a big impact. And I don't know if you're wondering what is the big impact that had on me, but it just made me realize, or it solidified the thought that curiosity is huge and should be a part of the day more often. If I had been curious about what desktop options there were, I probably would have found the one I found today sooner, and I would have been enjoying it longer by now. So all of that realization, I feel like, is part of this new moon in Scorpio happening. And I say happening, but it already peaked. It peaked this morning very early on. I'm talking 6 a.m. Eastern Standard Time, but we're still celebrating the new moon all day, and we're about to get into the questions and paint. Hello, April. So happy that you're here. Good evening to you. How was your weekend? And what are you looking forward to the most this week? And let's get to the moon. If it is your first time here, welcome to Moon Magic and Mindfulness with Grace. In this live show on YouTube, I like to discuss where is the moon every day and how that may or may not affect us emotionally. A lot of us in the audience are neurodivergent, autism, ADHD, highly sensitive empaths, entrepreneurs, artists, creatives, just regular people in general. There's room for all, and all are invited. This is one of the things I love the most about the astrology of it all, and that is that we're all under the same sky. Now, even though the moon and the planets are doing their thing, every time these things shift, it affects us differently. And it's interesting to note that if you are listening to other podcasts, such as April says, looking forward to an upcoming trip to Denver. Ooh, that sounds cold. For a few days this week. So I hope you stay warm, because I know Colorado can be really cold. So The thing about astrology is that you may hear or read on the paper or even hear me say that, um, I don't know, Mercury is going to go into Sagittarius on Tuesday or Thursday. Don't quote me on that because Mercury is already on Sagittarius, but I just use that as the example. And on the same day, right, the sun is going to be making an opposition to whatever, whatever, whatever. And the thing is that it's not on the same day because these things matter down to the millisecond of when they happen. And so I like to believe, and I laugh when I say that because delusion is a buzzword right now. I feel like I see it a lot in social media. Delulu, right? Delulu. Are we Delulu? If you're following and you're a Swiftie, then we are definitely Delulu, and we've been clowning for way too long about what's going on. But the thing is that I like to believe that part of my daily shifts and how I feel in the morning and the energy shift that comes around the afternoon and the energy shift that comes along with my kids' energy shifts and so on and so forth. I hope and like to believe that part of the influence in those energy shifts and in those mood swings is the fact that the astrology just constantly shifts and changes. It's not just on one day. You know, if we have the new moon today, but today also Mars is doing its thing with another, planet or with a zodiac sign. Both of those things rarely happen at the same time, which means you may feel higher effects of the new moon in the morning when it peaked, and then later in the afternoon, a planet does another thing, and then you feel a certain way. And I feel like this is part of my curiosity with astrology, and this curiosity really stemmed from my own curiosity to understand the people around me and understand myself. Now, psychology has always been an area of interest. I really played with the idea of going back to college to finish a master's degree in psychology when I decided to instead invest considerably less, but still not a lot less, and become a certified coach using positive psychology, right? And the thing about astrology is that it's always been a curiosity of mine. I've been following the astrology since I could read the paper. And that was like probably like 14 years old, since I could just flip through the paper and kind of not get super bored about it, because I used to get so bored. But it's always giving us something to look forward to, because we just don't know how it's going to be. And I like shedding light on what I just said as well. Because when we say I'm looking forward to it, when we use those words, it usually implies that we're looking forward to something positive. If it's negative, I don't want to look forward to it. Who wants to go through it? And I feel like it's that type of mindset that already sets you for kind of self-sabotage or failure. Because if you're going into something with that negative attitude of, I'm already not looking forward to it, so then what positive can you really expect, right? Oh, but I don't expect anything. Okay, well, if you don't expect anything, then how about you change the strategy and go into it with a little bit more sincere positivism instead of sarcasm, and then we can evaluate the result and compare notes. This is what I love about coaching, is that we have these types of conversations where everything you do is strategic, because we're actively trying to get to the bottom of something, which is, what is your problem and how are we going to get rid of it? Not fix it, get rid of the problem with a solution that is sustainable, if not permanent, right? And so looking back and realizing all these things, stopping, grounding yourself in the moment enough to ask yourself, What is this moment changing for me? Or does it change anything at all? And so on and so forth. That mindfulness, which is huge in this program, right? Moon magic and mindfulness with grace is a huge transformation to me. Because 3 or 4 years ago, my child is almost 5. So almost 5 years ago, I used to breathe and I used to pause a lot to breathe, but I was definitely in a lot more emotional danger than I am now. And I was a lot more triggered than I am now. And so every time I found myself taking a deep breath 3 or 4 years ago, it's because I was already holding my breath. And so I feel like that's a bit too late, because now you're gasping for air. And if you gasp for air, even if you don't intend to, your brain goes into high alert, because gasping for air is what your brain needs to do before you take off, to run away from the tiger. So your survival brain is going to get activated. Let's talk about that too. I have a lot to say today. This week, the protagonist of the week, I started this last week with Mercury. This week, the protagonist, or the big player in this week's astrology, is Uranus. And Uranus governs, I forgot that word, governs our nervous system. And so all of this transformation, let's talk about transformation. Have you actually ever looked at a cocoon with the butterfly, with just the cocoon doing its thing? Before the cocoon is fully formed, the worm attaches itself from its tail with the head down, right? And so the head is here and the tail is attached to the surface that they have deemed safe enough, right? And before this turns into a cocoon, there's a process that I have somewhere documented in my iCloud, because we have a lot of butterflies in the property. And so we see this often in the spring, and it is magical. And I didn't know butterflies went through that, but it sounds, and you can actually hear it, it sounds inside of the layer that's covering it like it is bubbling, like it is boiling. So raise your hand if you've ever seen that. If you haven't, when you're done here, look it up. But I remember when we moved here and we saw that for the first time, how my view of butterflies absolutely changed to utter respect, because it did not look fun at all. It sounded like torture to then bloom into this amazing being. And so transformation and baby steps, and even changing the smallest of habits, can be so powerful. But I get that we can catastrophize it and sensationalize it, and then feel the discomfort of how big it feels. And Uranus is not going to help that this week, because what it's doing is just shaking the surface, in my opinion, right? These are my words, just shaking the core, while you're sitting in the core of that pit, hoping to survive this transformation, right? If you're into tarot, the tarot card that corresponds to Scorpio is the death card. And that's no card to be afraid of, because it just means that there is something ending. And that can be, I no longer have this point of view. Oh, something ended. Now we're going to move on without that point of view. Now you've literally shed the skin of a point of view that you no longer have. It is okay to change your opinion. It is okay to backtrack and say, I used to believe this, but I no longer do. Right? These are, in my opinion, small things that are so easy to say and not necessarily easy to implement, and I get that, and not necessarily easy to kind of internalize, but the first step is acceptance, right? And then, this morning I mentioned that it is your actions that help move the needle along. And I don't know if you know what needle it is or what needle I mean, but what I mean is the needle of the clock, that little needle that moves. Is there some other name for it? If there is, you can let me know. But, we're not backtracking, we're not rewinding, and we don't want to be stuck. The clock keeps moving. And so to move along with it, how are you, moving along with those, with that transformation? So we're here with the new moon in Scorpio. I'm here on astroseek.com where you can get your chart. And if you don't understand it, you can let me know. And you can find out all this information. But we move into Sagittarius. And what I wanted to say earlier about Mercury being in Sagittarius is that Mercury is the planet that governs everything that goes on in your head. And Sagittarius is a mutable fire sign. So mutable means fluidity. It's boundless. Fire transforms. Fire also completely burns out, right? And destroys. And so if you feel like you're all over the place, if currently during this transit, you feel since last week that you just can't land on anything, it may be because of Mercury and Sagittarius. Now, Scorpio is also, governing over things or thoughts or feelings such as revenge. And if, we believe in absolutely harm to none, right? So revenge just isn't really something that I like to even ponder or entertain, right? Like that's just a word in a song, if you will. But that doesn't mean that during trying times like this one, where Scorpio is really stirring up certain feelings or certain thoughts, the fact that I don't condone revenge does not mean that I don't get the idea in my head. And so the question then becomes, what do you act upon and what do you just flow through? That's one of the questions we're going to discuss with this new moon. And Sagittarius is more action oriented. Think about the arrow that is the symbol for the zodiac sign. And so after Sagittarius, which will definitely prompt some action, Mars is also the ruler for Scorpio. So there's definitely, this is the week where the word of the week can also be action, because, what are you going to do about the way that things are landing for you in your head? That is the question, right? And we have Thursday and Friday, the moon in Capricorn, and the moon in Capricorn will probably question a sense of tradition and how the way that we have done things so far has worked. And so why change it? And that's absolutely fine. Let's talk about when people like me talk about transformation and you feel uncomfortable in your body because you're not ready for change. Let's talk about that, because I've been there too. And so many times, I find myself procrastinating on a lot of things because I'm not ready to do them all of the time. Honestly, I'll speak for myself and confess that I need to make several phone calls and I'm kind of dreading it and don't want to do it. It is so uncomfortable to make phone calls, right? If you're sensitive, you can relate. And so if you are hearing this whole talk about transformation and you're uncomfortable in your body because it's not the time for you, then absolutely listen to your body. Listen to what your nervous system needs and be patient and kind with yourself, right? Those are the things that I mean when I say those things. When you feel uncomfortable because you're not ready, do you give yourself grace in order to then tackle it? Now, here's the thing. If you really want to move that needle along, but you're sitting in the discomfort and not really taking action, but you really want to take action, then please know that it's okay to ask for help, especially if you've never done that before. That can be the one action you do, right? Decidedly, like, this is the time. That's the transformation. I feel like I'm going to pick up the phone or send that email or book that call and ask for help. That's a huge improvement, right? Or, in all honesty, you can prepare yourself for the fact that these questions, these things that you're questioning right now in your life, that you're afraid to make changes on or to change with, right? All of these things will come up again because it's all a cycle. And if you're in this loop, that's great. You can stay in this loop forever if that's what you want. But if you make a shift, then you shifted, that's great. But now you're in another loop. And this loop will be great and it will be amazing. And at first, it's going to be super scary, but then you're going to get used to it and you're going to be on cruise and it's going to be awesome. And then you're going to make a shift again and you're going to end up on another loop. And that's just the way life is. And that's great. But hopefully, you're not in this loop forever. And hopefully, we grow and we go to another loop and another and another and another, right? And so, choose people wisely and see who is advocating for you through it all. And all in all, by the end of the week will be that moment to hopefully decide what the next step will be. And that brings us to this new moon happening in Scorpio today. It peaked very early, probably before you got up, around 6 in the morning Eastern Standard Time, 3 a.m. Pacific Standard Time. But we're still in it. If you go outside, there's obviously no moon. By tomorrow, though, we already have a waxing crescent. And so things will be illuminated. If right now some of these things that I have brought up don't resonate or don't make sense, know that they may make sense later on during the week as the astrology flows. Now, this new moon is an opportunity to review or to project, I should say, especially because we're also just 9 days shy of Sagittarius season starting. And Sagittarius is the one that really starts taking action from all of the transformation that transpires during the whole month of Scorpio season when the sun is in Scorpio. And so, new moon in Scorpio with this transformation energy, I like to think of the next year. Now, is it the ideal time to plant seeds or to manifest? You're going to hear some astrologers say that it's not, and you're going to hear some other people say that it's a new moon, so you always plant seeds. At this point, if you are following the Moon Magic and Mindfulness with Grace 2023 manifestation agenda / journal, you know that the questions are geared to the new moon, regardless of the rest of the astrology. But it is correlated to the astrology as well. But it's still, with the questions, you're still kind of planting seeds of intention because of the way the questions flow. So let's get to them. If you have a journal, then let's take some notes. And because the new moon is happening today, I'm going to go ahead and start painting. In this show and in this book, we journal for the new moon and the full moon, and then we paint over what we journaled. Now, I'm going to go ahead and discuss those questions with you, and I've already written on my journal, so I will paint over it while we discuss the questions. So April, get a paper and a pen and let's get to it. The first question is, how am I flowing with the changes in my life? How are you flowing? A lot of changes have happened for me since August. Now is November. But August was a big catalyst for us with our child, our 4-year-old, and it's been nonstop ever since. And so I have to think about not just the changes in the last lunar cycle, which is what every new moon and full moon kind of reflect back on, but I have to go as far back as August because it really was that bookend moment for us as a family. And now more things are changing every day, and I find myself walking on eggshells a lot with my child, and I obviously don't want to do that because that's just a different kind of vibe than the one I want to put off, right? I want to put off the vibe of being a safe space. I want to be a safe space, not put off the vibe. I want to rephrase that. I want to be a safe space. However, in maneuvering my own emotions, my own trauma, my own triggers, and my own specific astrology, I have to be mindful of my child and how he receives my flow. So the question again is, how am I flowing with the changes in my life? And in all honesty, one of the ways that I am flowing with the changes that are happening is to remain rooted in the routines that I had already set for myself that have nothing to do with those changes. This being one of those things, right? There was a moment there when for a few weeks, we didn't know what time this show was going to be in. It all revolves around my child, right? So during those weeks of transition, notice the root of the word transformation, transition, right? During those weeks of transitioning, in between him dropping his nap and not napping every day, and other things, and then us deciding whether we were going to see each other for this conversation at 3 p.m. or at 4 p.m. or earlier or very late at night. Like right now it's 9:38. Are we going to see each other at 10 or 11? I definitely don't want that, right? And so during those weeks of mayhem, if you will, I decided I was really going to make it a point to advocate for myself and be very watchful of my time doing my research and then doing this, right? Sitting down to have this conversation with you every week. It's not a lot of time, right? Like it's very minimal, the time that we spend together and the time that I spent watching the astrology every day. It's like, 20 minutes of my morning where I go into AstroSeek and look at the chart every day and figure all that out, right? And so for me to advocate for those constants was also a huge step. I had never done that before. I had never had the need to advocate for my time like that before. I had never felt or had been in a position where I needed to decide what I can do for myself as self-care or as self-help or self-development, and how much time and resources I can allocate towards that. Time being the biggest resource of them all, right? So how am I flowing? I am breathing. And I am making sure that I am doing the things that bring me joy. And if we are overwhelmed, then I have to make sure that I speak up about the fact that I'm overwhelmed and I need help. When you come from trauma, I feel like it's very easy to fall back into a default of nobody cares. I'm not going to ask for help because it won't make a difference. And that's absolutely sad. I hope that that's not you. But if it is, then first of all, you're not alone. And second of all, that could be a huge change that you decide to implement right now that we're talking about changes. So question number 2 for the new moon: What can I do to anchor myself in calm and peace during the chaos of transformation? What can I do to anchor myself? These questions are just so on point, right? What can I do to anchor myself in calm and peace during the chaos of transformation? I feel like a lot of people are also very surprised with how they feel about what's happening um, in other countries. I don't want to say the names, and it's very sad, but I don't want to say it because people have been suppressed when they say these countries, and content has been blocked from people just saying the words. So you know what I'm talking about. Don't pretend like you don't. But I think part of the transformation collectively is how much people care about what's happening who never thought they would care so much. That is a huge transformative milestone, I feel like, to kind of witness and be a part of. At the same time, it's very transformative to look at your group of friends and see who has a differing view than you. And how do you feel about it? And most importantly, what are you going to do about it? Right? I've seen a lot of boycotting of people that send money to one or the other. And now the public wants to boycott because of those actions. And so what is happening is really shedding light on a lot of fundamental truths that when they come to light, to the surface, they speak volumes, and inevitably change happens. And we think of the word change and we think of physical change, and we don't realize that change is also so internal, right? But that's what Scorpio season is about, the internal changes, and realizing that an internal change or an internal action, or an action that may be prompted on a week like this one, could be you saying goodbye to a friendship because you have differing values, or you not doing something like reaching out to someone because you have different values. It all sounds so small when you look at it one by one, like, oh, people are disagreeing. Like, people are disagreeing, that's so reductive, right? We're talking about huge collective things happening that shed light on friends you really thought shared your values, and now it turns out they don't. And that is huge, especially for old people like us who, how many friends do we have, right? How easy is it to really make friends in your 30s or 40s? Are you really friends with the people you work with? Are you really friends with the people that you meet online? Or do you have those relationships? Are you really friends with people who have different values than you? That's a huge question to ask yourself. So no need to answer me. I'm here painting. Question number 3. Oh, wait. I was babbling and I never answered the question. What can I do to anchor myself in peace during the chaos of transformation? Again, I'm going to say it again. I can advocate for myself, for my time, and for my energy, right? If you know the symptoms of your burnout, then you can anticipate the burnout, see it as it comes, and prevent the worst of it. If you're listening and you're neurodivergent, then you know what I'm talking about. If you're listening and you're sensitive, then you definitely know what burnout is. So what are you doing to watch for your burnout, anticipate it, and be proactive instead of reactive, right? Taking a conscious decision to be proactive instead of reactive from now on in your life is a huge way of giving room to that Scorpio transformation. So think about that. I'm here putting some pink rays on my beautiful new moon painting. We haven't painted live together in so long, and I'm so happy we're doing that now. And the third question is, what is one thing that will bring me one step closer to the manifestation of my next best step? And so I love that question. That's a coaching question. We ask it a lot. What's your next best step? Because the thing that may come next may not necessarily be the best one. So you may want to skip it or hold on to it, right? So what's the next best step? You know better than anyone else. And then the affirmation for this week's new moon is, every day I become better and better at honoring my truth. What is your truth and how are you honoring it? Working for my dreams and manifesting peace and fulfillment. How are you actively manifesting that? If you are not actively seeking out moments of peace and harmony, then you're not manifesting it. You're just grasping it when it comes through, like, oh my goodness, I just noticed that the house is quiet, so let me sit down and enjoy it. Well, how about you carve out a moment to be quiet and actively seek out that moment instead of falling into it? Does that make sense? Right? Don't wait until the house is quiet to then enjoy it. Curate that moment for yourself. I feel like that's another huge step that we can take. And then you can actively say that you're working for your dreams and manifesting peace and fulfillment. Here's my little painting. It's just a black sky with some 1989 seagulls. If you know, you know, and a pink sun with pink rays. If you're a Taylor Swift fan, then you know why I did all that. But so wonderful. I hope that this week is filled with insights into how best to transition into next year. So that is it. That is all I have for you tonight. Let's go to Brain FM. You can find a free trial of Brain FM and a discounted membership in the link in my bio. If you're driving, please do not close your eyes. And if you are nice and comfortable, then let's go ahead and close your eyes and relax. Let's do a little meditation and move on with the rest of our evening. Settle into your slow breath. Nice and slow, just settle into that breath and follow my lead. Take a deep breath through your nose. Deep belly breath all the way. Hold it at the top. 1, 2, 3, 4, and let it go nice and slow through your mouth. Slow breath out all the way. Hold it again. 1, 2, 3, 4, and breathe in again through your nose. Deep breath in through your nose. Hold it at the top. 1, 2, 3, 4, and exhale nice and slow through your mouth. Long, deep breath out. Hold it again. 1, 2, 3, 4, and relax. And as you relax, take a look around and see darkness. And as you sit in this dark space, imagine how it feels, what you can sense on your skin. The starry sky above. And remember to hold your intentions so close as you think and affirm, I trust the process and that everything is aligned for my highest good. Every day I become better and better at honoring my truth, working for my dreams, and manifesting peace and fulfillment. I am loved. I am filled with gratitude. And I am ready to take even the smallest of steps to help move my life along. With me, take one deep breath in through your nose, nice and slow. Deep breath in all the way. Hold it at the top. 1, 2, 3, 4, and breathe out through your mouth. Long extended breath out all the way. Hold it again. 1, 2, 3, 4, and breathe in again. Through your nose, nice and slow all the way. Hold it at the top. 1, 2, 3, 4, and exhale one more time through your mouth. Long extended breath out, nice and slow. Hold it again. 1, 2, 3, 4, and relax. And as you relax, bring your attention to your body. Wiggle your toes and open your eyes and come back to me. I hope that this week just brings you clarity and that you honor even the smallest of steps and give yourself a big pat on the back if the only step you took today was to get up. I love you and I will see you next week. Bye.